Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Kitab Club. I'm so happy you're here. Today, I will be in conversation with the author of our November book, which was Reasons We Break by Jesmeen Kaur Deo. If you have been following along on the read along, then you know that this was my most anticipated read of this year, and it didn't disappoint. Spoiler alert. A little bit about Jasmine. Jesmeen Kaur Deo grew up in northern British Columbia, Canada, where she spent most of her childhood daydreaming. She loves books that can make her laugh and tug at her heartstrings in the same paragraph. When not wrapped up in stories, she can be found biking, playing the harmonium, or struggling to open jars. Her 2022 debut YA novel, TJ Power Has Something to Prove, garnered international recognition. It was shortlisted for the German Youth Literature Prize as well as for the Amy Mathers Teen Book Award in Canada, and was a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard Selection and Indie Next Pick, among other honors. Her second YA novel, Reasons We Break, was named a Publisher Weekly Best Book of 2025. Jasmine currently resides in Ontario, where she's always working on another book. So, lots of different genres, lots of many different things going on in this book. Let's get talking with Jasmine about this book and just about writing. So, yeah. I was watching a reel that you posted right before this about like I literally didn't even realize that today is like the 1 month anniversary of this book
Yes.
coming out, which is so insane. And like honestly, I feel kind of honored that this like chat is like kind of closing out the months of promo for this book.
I think it's so fitting. It's so
Oh,
fitting. It was your November book.
yes,
So
it was the November book. And
I love the tabs that you have in there, by the way. It's
thank you.
so aesthetic.
I love like just looking at it. It just looks so nice
Oh,
on
me
my
too.
shelf too. And like even just like scrolling back, like because when I was like coming up with questions for the interview and stuff, I was like looking and like mostly I was just laughing at like the scenes that I'd annotated because I was like it was mostly like funny banter scenes that I enjoyed reading, like the happy scene and like all those things. So yeah, it's
I'm
just
glad to hear it.
well, we kind of started talking about the book already, but welcome, Jasmeen, to Kitab Club. Very happy to have you here today.
Thank you. So
Um,
glad to be here with you and to get a chat about the book.
yes. So first of all, I mean, obviously we met at Y'all Fest and we have spoken before very much about TJ Power has something to prove, but I'm very excited to talk about Reasons We Break and everything about how it came to be. But first, if you can take us through like kind of what your writing journey was like. Did you know from like a very young age that you wanted to write, or like did it come later on? Because this came out this year, and then TJ came out, I think
3
2022,
years ago.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Yes. So yeah, thank you again for having me. I'm very excited to be chatting with you again. It was so much fun the last time we did a podcast. So
yeah.
very glad to be here. In terms of my writing journey, I'll try to be kind of short with it because I am known to ramble. But essentially, I was definitely one of those unoriginal kids who wanted to be a writer since I was quite young. When I was like, in my tweens, I was writing like a lot of really bad poetry and also short stories. My parents, they love my poetry. And even to this day, they're like, you should go back to poetry. And I'm like, bless your heart. It was not good. But yeah, especially my dad, he was like very encouraging about my writing. But I just found myself really unable to have enough of an attention span to write a full novel, which was ultimately like what I really wanted to do. And so when I was a teenager, I kind of drifted away from writing a little bit, and I got into like art, like visual arts, like to draw and stuff like that. And I also got really into just like watching TV, which was something that I really hadn't done very much of. Like we weren't very much of like a TV or movie family. And so I got really into like TV and movies in my teens. And then through that, I kind of got introduced to the world of fandom. And I started writing fan fiction for some of my favorite stories. And I just got like so much encouragement from the fan fiction communities that I was part of that it really sort of gave me the courage to try my hand at writing an original novel again. I kind of thought to myself, if I can write multiple novel-length fan fictions, I don't see why I can't go ahead and write an original one. So that was kind of what gave me the courage and faith in myself to just go ahead and start. And so around, I would say 2016, 2017, I wrote my first like original novel. And then I was editing it and revising it. And then I happened to get a mentorship with Meredith Ireland, also known as May Corland, the author of Five Broken Blades. And she helped me to revise the book even further because that was a contemporary fantasy. And she very much is a fantasy kind of writer. We basically, she helped me to put together a list of agents to query, because if you are interested in traditional publishing, that's kind of the way to, the usual way, I would say, to get published. And so I queried and I signed with a literary agent in 2018. And then we revised the book some more. And in 2019, I went on submission with that book. It wasn't really a good time, I think, for contemporary fantasy. It was kind of before this like current like fantasy romantasy boom. And it was after like fantasy series were kind of petering out. So it was really kind of like not in a great time. So it didn't sell, not for any particular reason, it's just, not right for the market. People weren't in love with it, whatever. And then while that was on submission, I wrote my next book that would be published, TJ Powar. And that one we decided to try to sell in 2020, and it sold in 2020, came out in 2022. And this book, the one that just came out, we sold this one in 2023. After an interesting journey. And yeah, it's published in 2025. So it's been a while. It's been a long time.
That's crazy, because I remember you talking a bit about this when we did the podcast, but I didn't know about the previous book. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about it if you want to share. And also, since there is a market for it now, do you have like plans to bring it back from the back burner, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I've even had like opportunities like presented to me. I feel like the book in the form that it is now, because it was my first book and I feel like I was learning so much about original fiction writing during it, I feel like I as a writer have really grown past that stage of my skill. And it's not that I don't like love the themes of the story or the story. I just feel like if I were to tackle it again, I'd probably do it a different way. So I'm not saying I'm like totally against it, but I don't have any plans at the moment. It was a contemporary fantasy. I think my query letter which describes the book, is actually like floating around somewhere. But it's very like mid 2010s, like YA. It's about like a magic wielder who's kind of, as a double agent on two sides of like a war. And of course she is very kind of thinks she won't get, too attached to the other side, but of course she does, and then that leads to conflict. And in my mind, it was kind of a serious starter. But yeah, that's what it was. I have a lot of fondness in my heart for it, but I don't know that I would publish it in the form that it is currently.
So, I mean, because before this, I had no idea that you wrote anything other than like.
Oh yeah, I have another book too that I wrote when I was querying my agent, like my agent list. And that one has never been seen by anybody other than me. It's still like a work in progress, but it's very much like a book of my heart. It's like an adult historical fantasy. Yeah, like I'm still like working on it kind of in between books, but I hope one day, knock on wood.
Okay, so I guess this is like a good book to start us off in that way, because it's like, yes, the first book was like YA contemporary, yes, and then this is like genre bending and has like so many different, like I don't even know how to like put this.
Neither did my publisher.
Yeah, exactly. And so
no one knew.
And so that is kind of like a good, like people who do come into your works and like see so many wide varieties of things you can write. I feel like that's like a good way for you to like even later on get into like the adult historical fiction and like contemporary fantasy and stuff.
I hope so. I think it's really cool when people find their niche and like, really love writing a particular genre. And it's also very cool because readers who love that genre will like continue to sort of form around that kind of body of work. But fortunately or unfortunately, I think I'm just the kind of writer who is all over the place. And I think I just hope to find new readers with every book. And if people come along from the last book, then I'm very, very happy. But I also acknowledge that sometimes my writing is very different from book to book. So I would never blame anybody for, liking one book more than the other or not really choosing to go along that journey.
Yeah, I do agree. I don't think it's like a fortunate, unfortunate situation. I think it's just like because even when I was reading it, I obviously did have that, this is a little bit of darker and like has a lot of heavy themes that I mean TJ had, but like in a different aspect because again, they're very different themes in the book. But it's still like I could still see you, I guess, or like your writing in it. So I feel like that is like the connecting feature there. So yeah,
Okay,
I
I'm
think.
glad to hear that because when I was at the last conference I was at, I asked one of our in my publisher, somebody who works in school publicity and marketing, Maddie Hughes. Shout out! I love her so much, and she was such a big advocate for this book. And she told me that she read T.J. Power, and I asked her, "Well, did you see me in it? And did you recognize it?" And she said, "Yes, like obviously it's very different, but I could tell that you wrote it, and I felt vindicated." So I'm glad to hear that from you too.
Definitely. Like, I feel like a lot of it is like obviously they have all the characters have like different voices and like they're very strong in their characterization, but like there's like a little bit of the I don't know if it's the humor or the banter or like just like there's like some phrasing where it's just like oh I can see where and it's because obviously these characters are all like people who grow with each other and who have been around each other for so long, and that's kind of like how it is in real life. Like you start blending with the people you hang out with, and so
Totally.
like seeing that in this was also really fun, like because I could see like throughout like through the later parts of the book where Simran was kind of taking like Rajan's like mannerisms in some ways, and like he was like surprised by how bold he was being in some
Yeah, yeah.
moments and stuff. So that was like very interesting to see. So yeah, anyways, like I've been saying, I love this book. I very much
I'm so
enjoyed
glad to
it.
hear it.
Yeah,
Like I said, I just love hearing when people like both my books. So thank you.
yes, big advocate for your books always. But yeah, can you share more about how? Because you said you sold this book in 2023, but I
Mhm.
think at Y'all Fest you mentioned that you started writing it in 2020, which was way before TJ even got out. So, like, did you like already? Because you said that you wrote or you sold TJ in 2020. So
Mhm.
already by that time you knew you wanted to write Simran and Rajan's story?
Yes. So even when I was writing TJ Power, I found myself very intrigued by the characters of Simran and the characters of Rajan. I didn't know what kind of story that would be in particular, but even before TJ Power sold, I kind of consoled myself. When I go on submission, I think to myself, if this book doesn't sell, at least I can do this.
Mhm.
And so with TJ Power, I thought to myself, well, if it doesn't sell, then I'm going to write a story about Simran and Rajan anyway, and I'll still be able to live in this world, and maybe it'll be even stronger because I'll have spent so much time in this world. So yes, and I think when the book sold, like TJ Power sold in 2020, immediately, before I got notes back on it, I just started writing Simran
Mhm.
and Rajan's story. It was quite different than it is now, but I wanted to get started on it because I had heard so much about this, like I think it's called like the sophomore slump or whatever, like the
Mhm.
second book slump that many writers experience.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I can write the book before the first book
It
comes
hits.
out, maybe I'll be able to like avoid it,
Yeah.
which I think worked in many ways, but also backfired because. Yes, it's true that I didn't have the pressures of readers or the industry on me, but because I didn't have the pressures of any of those people on me, I very much wrote very freely, didn't worry about any of those things, and it became a book that my previous publisher felt was too different, and that's why I
Mhm.
had to bring it to a different publisher, and that's why it's a very very long wait between books because I finished writing Reasons We Break. It was quite clean even by 2021, but it just took a while to get there.
Mhm.
But I'm very very glad. Like it wasn't a guarantee that this book would have published, right? I
Mhm.
feel very grateful that it did. So I
Yeah.
don't mind too much that it took a while.
Definitely. And I mean, I think it found its time, and I think it also came at like a really good time in the book world, I guess. I feel like there's like a lot. I mean, yeah, like we can look back at it and see like what could have worked, what could have not worked and stuff. But like, I feel like the fact that it came at this time was like pretty perfect. And I feel like a lot of the things like the book talks about is like, even like, because in my book club, there was like someone who was mentioning how this was quite a hard read for her because she lives in Surrey and like goes to people school with people who could be Simran or Rajan and things like that and stuff. And so like I feel like the fact that it found its way and it made it is a very big deal, and I'm glad that it did because
Thank
it's
you. And
touching
I'm
many
actually
people's
really
lives.
intrigued and happy to hear that, somebody from the geographical region was able to kind of see the book too. I always
Mm-hmm.
forget, but
Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
also feel like, my editor for this book told me, that they were trying to capitalize a little bit, like on, everyone's trying to get on romantasy, right? But I think it's
Mm-hmm.
not so much like specifically fantasy, but
Yeah.
people, I think, enjoy romance in like many different high stakes genres, right? Like high stakes
Mm-hmm.
romance. So
Yeah.
that's what I felt too, that it probably was like a good time.
Yeah. And I feel like even like obviously romantasy is really big right now, but even like other combinations with romance have been so big. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more like mystery romance and thriller romances recently, and
Horror
I feel like
romance. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so this like has a bit of that thrill slash mystery in it because you're kind of like on the edge, not knowing how it's gonna go and like what's gonna happen, and it's like very high stakes. So I feel like this is even falling somewhat in that category.
Amazing.
It fits many boxes. It can't be tied down to one. So that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you said this was like pretty much done by 2021. What was like the writing process like for the book? Like, and also just in general, like, do you have like a particular setup? Are you able to write anywhere? Do you have like a beverage of choice when you're writing, like things like that?
Yeah. When I say 2021, I just want to clarify because I feel like I
Mhm.
didn't clarify, like end of 2021. So basically
Yeah.
2020. It still took me some time. And I wrote it kind of in between other things. My
Mhm.
writing process tends to very much sort of depend on where my life is at, where I am, wherever I can fit in the writing. And I
Mhm.
would say majority of the time I fit in the writing at night because that's just when there's the least demands on my
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
and least people blowing up my phone or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody. Some people like to write in the morning. I think for the same reason, but I'm just
Mhm.
not a morning person at this point in my life. So always very much at night for the most part. When I'm drafting like earlier drafts, I
Mhm.
tend to like to write on the couch, have some fun music playing, even music with words, because I find the early stages of drafting to be honestly a little bit boring for me.
Mhm.
I like to revise a book. I don't like to have a blank page. So I just have to get through drafting. And so I try to make that as fun for myself as possible. In terms of beverages, I'm honestly very much like a warm water person and very Asian, very Asian that way. Um,
Warm water, right here.
yeah.
There
Um,
you go.
that's kind of my average routine when I'm drafting, and then when I start going into drafts that have to be cleaner, I'm getting closer to sending things to readers, my agent, editor, whatever.
Mhm.
I will usually transition to the desk, the serious place, and then the music will usually transition into something that's more like background noise, lo-fi stuff, something that instrumental, doesn't have words in it, doesn't distract me. Um, and I will kind of shift from Google Docs, which is what I usually start on, to Microsoft Word, and that's kind of how I shift into a tidier draft.
Mhm.
And that's my general writing process. I often write like on my phone, or you know. It used to be that I would write on my phone, or if I was in a library or something, then I would just like hop on a computer and write on the Google Docs there. I will say that I've had more problems with my wrists and like tendonitis, pain, and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit more limited now in where I can write. So it tends to be a bit more at home where I have all my assistive devices and my ergonomic keyboard.
Nice, very nice. That is very interesting to hear though, because I feel like most authors, every single one who I've spoken to says that they hate revision and that it's the worst part of the process for them. So I'm very, it's very interesting, but I do also feel like I can relate a little bit because I'm very beginning stages of writing always, and so I still haven't finished a full book, and I'm also kind of in the space where like fan fiction is so easy to write. Why am I not able to get that
Right.
into an original
Mhm.
novel? But revision also, just like even for the works that I have written that are like smaller pieces, like
Yeah.
it's just so much easier and so much more
And I
fun.
wonder if that has to do with like our fan fiction background, because I feel like with fan fiction, it's like the story is written in many ways. Like, you know, the characters, there's so much to go
Exactly.
off, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I
that's why
think
it's like revising is almost right, like writing fan fiction. It's like, how do I change this?
yeah.
Like, how
So
do I
like
make this better?
that, and I feel like it's also like I have to make the decisions. Like in fan fiction, I feel like the decision about like characters and what to like put traits in them and stuff, like those things are already said. The only thing I have to figure out is how to get them from point A to point B in a
Right.
story. But in this, everything is up to me. And so just
Yeah.
the need to make choices is like, but what is
Yes.
this? But what is that? And
It's a
it's
huge
endless.
cognitive overload, honestly. And I think, everybody is different. I think the way that I kind of navigate that is I do it in layers. So I know that I can't
Hmm.
figure out the world building, the plot, the characters all in one draft. So often
Hmm.
it's one draft I'm focusing on, how I'm going to fine tune the character journeys. The next draft I'm going to focus on the plot. The next draft is like, oh well, this one character's journey is kind of rough and not quite right. So I'm gonna follow that thread when I do this next read through. So I'm very much like in layers. I find that less overwhelming.
That is very interesting. I have not thought of doing it like that. I'm gonna have to try that out.
Let me know if it works. Everyone's
Yes,
different.
will do. That is, yeah. So then if you do it, and you mentioned the layers, but like, so it's usually the plot is what starts it off for you, and then the characters.
That's right. I mean, it depends on the book too. So if
Hmm.
I'm writing a spin-off, like Reasons We
Yeah.
Break, as you can imagine, the characters came first, and I think with that one, it was the characters kind of pushing things along. But I,
Hmm.
I always start with some kind of plot in my head. So yes, that's what's driving the story. And it's usually like a very rough, just almost like vibes based. Like if anything,
Hmm.
like this kind of happens and something dangerous happens here. Like it's just very, very vibes based and mood based. Like what
Yeah.
I want it to feel like, almost the plot. And then
Hmm.
the next couple of drafts are usually refining the plot to actually make sense
Hmm.
to the mood or the vibe that I was trying to get at in a specific scene.
Hmm.
And then the other kind of layers, like, okay, let me refine. And usually when I'm doing those first couple of drafts, like organically the characters start to develop more just by
Hmm.
writing them more. So that usually kind of comes into shape at the same time. And then it becomes more specific things like, oh, I need to work on this part or this part or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just had this very interesting thought. Reasons We Break sounds like fan fiction for
It
teaching now.
is. It is. And that's why I say, like, that's what it felt like for me. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have like a slump writing this book, um, because it just felt like writing fan fiction. It was so fun. Like, obviously, it was hard and blah, blah, blah. Like, writing a book is hard, but like so much of it, I just felt like really compelled. Like, I couldn't stop it. Like, I had to write it.
Mhm.
Even when it was difficult and I didn't know if it would get published, I was like, I need to write this. It was the same compulsion I feel with fan fiction. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that because, like, as soon as you mentioned, like, of course, because this is a spin-off, and I was like, wait, that makes
Yes.
sense. It
And
makes
that's how I feel about I've never had an opportunity to write a series, but I imagine a series feels similar because it's like, after post canon, like you basically just write the next book. And actually, when I was at Y'all Fest, I talked to a writer, I forget her name,
sense.
but she's a romantasy writer. She was on a panel with me, and
Mm.
she said something similar that, she writes series very, very fast. And I
Yeah.
asked her how, and she said, oh, I actually draft very neatly, because it just feels like I'm writing fan fiction.
Wow. So with this, that you had like the themes, like you wanted some dangerous parts here and all of these things. So was it like the theme of wanting to discuss this topic of like gangs and like, the culture that is very much present right now in lots of parts of Canada and stuff? Like, was that kind of the theme that you wanted, or like you knew you wanted to discuss and like describe in this book? Like, was that what kind of started it? Or that?
So it's interesting. It's interesting because that's definitely one of the themes.
Mhm.
But it's always interesting to see kind of what you go into a book thinking and what kind of comes out as the output. Because it's always surprising when I see reader reactions to, not that it should surprise me, because again, the book very much emphasized that aspect of things. And certainly that was a big driving force, because I started wondering about Rajan's background in particular and sort of why he might be the way that he is. And it kind of naturally led me to that idea of wanting to kind of explore how South Asian criminal organizations work in the Western Canada and how they recruit youth. But one of the kind of like original themes that really I thought this would make an intriguing topic for this book was this thought of how many of us, not most, or if not all, have to at some point confront the mortality of people that we love, whether that's a parent or grandparent or mentor who's not even blood related. Pretty much everybody, I think it's almost like universal feeling that, one day you look at that older person in your life and you realize, oh my gosh, they've got gray hair. Oh my gosh, like, they have health problems now. And like, or something sudden happens to them. And you realize, maybe for the first time that this person who has guided me throughout my life may not be here they won't be here forever. And I will most likely have to learn to live without them and without their help and without their love. And I think that's such a struggle for anybody of any age to kind of have to come to terms with. And it was a question for me, because I think I often go into books asking a question of some kind that I want to answer that maybe I don't know the answer to when I start out. And I think that's what actually drives me to want to go through the heinous process of actually writing a book, is I want to figure out the answer to that question. And I think thematically that question for me was, well, how do you deal with it? How do you come to terms with it? How do you prepare for it, maybe? And that was a question I felt that by the end of the book, there's a scene between Simran and her dad right before the epilogue. And that felt like the scene that I was writing everything towards. So, of course, it's all this gang stuff is happening in the book. There's action, there's thrills, there's romance. But I think underpinning all of Simran and Rajan's actions and everything that they do in the present and in Rajan's case, the past, was very much driven by that fear and that sort of confusion and not really knowing what to do when people they love might be in harm's way.
Yeah, I bawled my eyes out at that scene. I,
Good.
and also when Rajan was talking to his mom in that other scene, those made me cry a lot. Yeah, I think also as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, that makes so much sense because we have like kind of two sides of it. One with the person who's actively dealing with it in throughout the book, and the other who's kind of had to face that,
Had to deal with it.
also the repercussions of, not the repercussions, but like, the things that, the way they deal with it in different ways and in similar ways too. And so I think, yeah, that is definitely a big theme of this book. And as soon as you said it, I was like, that makes so much sense. And I think you did a great job showing that because, again, like I said, I cried a lot reading those scenes. So,
I'm really glad. I'm glad to hear it. I've said this before on Instagram, but I never usually cry writing. I can cry doing like when I'm reading other books, but never when I'm writing. And the only time I've ever shed a tear was when I was writing that scene between Simran and her dad.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that, like,
so even for my emotionally constipated soul to shed a tear, like that had to be major,
literally, this is the first year that any book has ever made me cry. This is, I think the third book this year that has made me cry. I am not a crier, so
Hey,
it's an accomplishment of this book
well, I'm
that
even more honored now. It's been an emotional year for you. What were the other books that made you cry? Do you remember?
one was As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by
Oh yeah,
Fable,
yeah.
and then the other one was This Is Me Trying by Raquel Marie.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that one, but it looks very emotional, so I can
It's
imagine.
very, very emotional. That is also similar theme of
Is
not
it?
knowing what to do when people around you might die. So
Okay, very intrigued. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, that is another, yeah, that one was all, that is a kind of like throughout the book you're crying, This one was like
Uh,
very, very, yeah, like I was like feeling it throughout, obviously, with like the distress that Simran was in. Like I literally could feel it in my body. And then it all came to conclusion when she finally kind of got to be a kid in that scene.
mhm.
So yeah, definitely an accomplishment of this book to make me cry. So
I'm very glad then.
yeah. Okay, so you said that obviously like all of it was like kind of leading you up to that scene, but were there like was that scene difficult to write and like trying to get it right? But also were there any other scenes while writing the book that you found difficult to write, and how did you tackle that?
That's a good question. I think for that last scene, so often when I'm writing a book, if I'm writing towards an answer of something, I try to figure out the answer ahead of time. I try to predict what that healing might look like, what that resolution might look like, even if it might be very different from the start. You know, for example, in TJ Power, I wrote the final debate scene, before I wrote the entire book. And similarly, I kind of wrote bits and pieces of Simran and her dad's conversation before I wrote most of the book. And I wanted to figure out how to get her there. I didn't even know kind of who would be involved in the conversation. It was just like the ideas in it, or what I thought might be the answer to that question. So in that way, I think it wasn't so much. I think it was only difficult in the sense of, well, it's such a hard question that I didn't know how to answer. And it took me a lot of time to try to think of what would be the resolution, if any, if there is any resolution to that kind of question. So that's what I would say there. In terms of other difficult scenes, other than just like the logistics of general writing, I think the code breaking and math scenes were difficult, of course, in their own fashion, because I had to actually come up with codes and actually write them myself for Simran to break. And I tried to make them not obvious either. So I did a bunch of research like mathematics and cryptography, linear algebra. I just did a lot of reading about in the literature about how gangs kind of tend to encode their ledgers, and really interesting and creative
Yeah.
techniques that those guys use sometimes. And then I tried to like make my own mishmash of a code that Simran would have to crack. And I vividly remember many a night kind of hunched over, cross-legged on my couch, just like trying to write a new cipher and then scrapping it and then, you know what I mean? Like just trying to put it together. And
Mhm.
so that was a difficult process in a fun way. It was very kind of like
Mhm.
challenging in a fulfilling and way, a kind of way that made me kind of want to continue to work on it. It wasn't frustrating, if that makes sense. It was just something I wanted to figure out.
That's very, very nice to hear because the math was so fun to read. Like, I mean, I don't know if this is a general thing, but just as me being a math nerd, I very much enjoyed trying to figure everything out. Like, I was like searching up things and like trying to like
Oh,
do
okay.
them and things, and like it did not
I
make
love
sense.
it. Oh my
But
God, amazing. Oh, I'm actually
yeah,
so happy to hear that. Okay, that's cool. So it
yeah,
wasn't
and like
obvious. All right.
yeah, it was just fun to even hear the way she would like explain how she went about it and everything. Like, and then even like the scene where Rajan did it, like, it was just, I think like that moment was like such a good like payoff to like seeing that scene like every time she's explaining it to him. Yeah, just the math also like I'm glad that it wasn't a frustrating process. I kind of also felt like maybe I need to put math in some of my writing. And
Yeah.
so maybe I
Why
will.
not?
We'll see how the process goes for me.
You got to use your strength. You got to use the things that you love, put it into the writing, and it becomes even more fun. I'm glad, really, really glad to hear that from a math
Yeah.
major.
Yeah. So you did a lot of research for the math aspect of it, and I did see in your acknowledgments, I think, that you said you did a lot of research and stuff to also, find out and like may enrich the story more with all the criminal organization aspects of the book. What was that like, and like how did you like approach it?
Hmm. So I would say it was kind of when I was working on the second draft, because that's when the plot really started to come together.
Mhm.
And I realized I had to know more about this kind of phenomenon of South Asian gangs, because I kind of knew about it because a lot of kids in my community knew about it. Like we heard about
Mhm.
it on the news. growing up, but I just didn't know kind of like where it came from, like why so many of our youth, of my community were involved in it. And so I knew I just had to kind of look into this more. So when I was writing that second draft, in the early stages of it, I basically just went online, looked for documentaries, looked for papers, looked for articles, like news articles on whatever kind of things have been happening recently, and just read everything I could get my hands on, watched everything I could get my hands on, documentaries, interviews, mockumentaries, not like mockumentaries, like fictional depictions, like in a documentary style, which I don't really know if it goes for a documentary, but like a lot of stuff like that. And then I also had the opportunity to interview a youth probation officer in kind of roughly the same region the book takes place. And I was able to confirm a couple of things about what that's like, and working with kids who have those kinds of backgrounds. And that was really illuminating for me. Of course, in my research, you start to learn a little bit too much, and that your story will not logistically fit into certain like real life, timelines and things like that. So I did play around with certain things. But it's always better to have more information, so you know what you're playing around with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then whatever decisions you make, you're making them informed. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's true. I think also, even just like the youth probation officer, I'm sure that research like really came into it with like, I'm forgetting her name, but like the
Cat.
one cat, yes. That also like that relationship was so meaningful in the book. Even like even before, like at first I was like, there were moments where I was not sure why she's being so nice, and I was like, kind of, again, like this book is such genre bending like style. Like I fully went into mystery mode thinking that she's gonna be the bad person in the end,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
those kind of things. And like obviously that was probably on purpose, but like slowly like seeing their relationship unfold. And also I guess like in that way, the way I was entrusting her was kind of how Rajan was entrusting her, and then him slowly, not of his own accord, like letting her into his life and things like that. So yeah, I think definitely that relationship and that aspect of this book was also very very well done. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was definitely a highlight. I really enjoyed writing them.
Yeah.
I've talked about this before, but at least in the media that I have consumed, which
Mhm.
admittedly is kind of limited in general, I feel like I see so much of like, a sort of young girl and an older male mentor kind of dynamic. And I kind of wanted to see the sort of gender flipped version of that as like
Yeah.
a woman mentor to a young man. So that was kind of part of what I wanted to write there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so fun question now. There is a moment in this book, I think it's like one of the flashbacks where they're like in a tutoring session and like they like exchange music and like get each other's like what they usually listen to. So because you also mentioned you listen to a lot of music and like even music with words when you're writing and like initial stages of drafting. So like what is a song that you would say describes this book slash song that you listen to a lot while writing this one? And if you had a song for each of the characters that would represent them slash that would be on their playlist, what would it be?
Right. Okay. So first of all, I have to start off with a disclaimer that my music taste is like kind of sketch and it's
Okay.
all over the place. Often I'm listening for vibes. Like I won't even be like necessarily even paying attention to the lyrics. It's just like the vibe of like whatever the music is giving me. So keep that in mind. Don't judge me and my poor non-musical soul. I think for Reasons We Break, and particularly Simran, there was a song called The Queen of Broken Hearts by Black Bear, I think it is. And ostensibly that song is about like social media, like if you look up the lyrics but and you look up the meaning of the song. But when I was listening to it, there's lyrics that go, I'm the queen of broken hearts, I used to be a shooting star, when did I get so dark? Like that stuff like that, it just felt very Simran as she kind of spirals down. And especially in the scenes when she's with the gang and doing all these kinds of things and kind of getting drunk on Powar, it kind of felt, the vibe of the song felt right for her. So I actually listened to that quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then for Rajan, I remember when I was writing a lot of his scenes, I was listening to a song by Lil Nas X called Tales of Dominica, which is a very sad song if you listen to it and listen to the wording of it. It's really about a broken home and a boy from it and how he's struggling with that. And I think that is the actual meaning of the song as well. But yeah, I listened to that song quite a lot, I think for obvious reasons if you read the book, when writing some of Rajan's home life and his scenes there. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any that you would give for TJ and Charlie as well?
Yes. So TJ, I had it on my mind and now I'm like forgetting it now. But I'll just say the one that's on my mind now, which is one of the readers of TJ Powar suggested "Look What You Made Me Do" by Taylor Swift, which I think goes along with TJ's attitude quite a lot. And then for Charlie, I will choose "Stutter" by Maroon 5 for obvious reasons.
There you go. I love that. Okay, I'm gonna have to listen to all these songs right after this and like
Just
understand
no judgment, as
the,
long as you promise,
the vibe.
we're good.
Yes. Okay, so in terms of your reading, what are like books that like maybe inspired your writing style or like just like that made you want to write and like yeah, or that or just like your favorite books from this year or like books that you keep thinking about still after so long of reading
Yeah. Okay. So always a hard question to try to think of my
them.
favorite books, as I'm sure you can imagine.
If you can give
Um,
us just a few, or
what's
just
that?
if you can just narrow it down to a few.
Yes. No, no, I'm gonna go by theme here. So I think, when I think about Reasons We Break, I think about a book that really kind of, I feel like if I hadn't read that book, it would have impacted the book. Is Perfect Chemistry by Simone L. Kelly's, which is like such an old book now, like 2008 or something like that.
Mhm.
But it was a gang backdrop romance. It features a boy from a vulnerable background who is gang involved. It takes place in the States though, so it has a little bit of a different demographic, and it's very much a romance, from the wrong side of the tracks to like the good girl. So you can see already where the similarities start to emerge. And I just love that book. Like I just felt like the characters were so well drawn out, and it was funny, and it was thrilling. So it was just like a really fun romance, and I feel like I kind of drew a lot from the vibes of that when I was writing this book. I also want to shout out to All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, because I feel like that was the first book or other series of books that made me really fall in love with the potential of young adult contemporary and low stakes books, because I think prior to reading that series, I was very much into more like high stakes, fantasy, sci-fi, this kind of thing. And I
Mhm.
still like read contemporary, but it wasn't, I wasn't like obsessed with it. And I think to All the Boys, like I just loved it so much. And it's, even though it's lighthearted and it has like low stakes ostensibly, like it feels very high stakes, right? Like in the moment, like she just does such a good job getting you in the head of that main character and really exploring a lot of like moving and emotional themes. And so I think if it weren't for that book, I never would have considered writing a young adult contemporary myself. So I have to give a lot of credit to those books. Books I've been thinking about a lot. I love Joya Joffney's young adult books are so good. Like I frequently think about them. I also have been thinking a lot for some reason. The only book of Taylor Jenkins Reid I've read is the tennis one. Carrie Soto is back. And I just loved it so much. It has a really emotional father-daughter dynamic again. And so any kind of father-daughter dynamic in fiction is going to make me cry. And also in real life. So it just like made me cry so much, and it was so good. I'm not usually like a sports book kind of person, but I really got into it. So I have to give her credit for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's so many, but those are the two that just come up in my head right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow, that is very interesting. I do completely agree about the, low stakes aspect of contemporaries that you mentioned because I also like as soon as you said that, like that kind of is what inspired you to write or like that made you feel like you wanted to write these books. Like these are very much, I feel like people can consider it low stakes, but it packs so much in it and is so like meaningful in the themes that it discusses, that like even if it is low stakes and people are just reading it for like the romance aspect of it, or like this like light reading, like they'll still take away so much from it. So I
Thank
think,
you. Yeah. And I also have to say that writing lighthearted contemporary, like my first book, gave me so much appreciation for how hard it is to
yeah.
get readers invested and get them to like continue being invested when there's no like high stakes, like someone's going to die involved. Like
Mhm.
it's so hard, like, so much respect.
Yeah, definitely. So now that you have two books out in this world, what is something that you would tell to other inspiring authors, either from diverse backgrounds or just anyone who's wanting to write books and publish books?
Hmm. So I think this advice, well, first of all, my first piece of advice is that always take advice with a grain of salt, because everybody comes from a different background, have different goals. And so if something doesn't work for you, just discard it and move on,
Mhm.
and try not to let it stick with you. Because I think there's so many people who give advice and say, you have to do this, or like, it has to be like this. And trust me, it doesn't have to be. Um, but I will say, speak from my own experience. I will say that especially for authors of diverse backgrounds who come from like minority groups, that publishing can be a bit of a grind for anybody. But I don't want to discourage. I think by saying this, I think the reason I'm saying this is because in case this happens to you, I want you to know that this is very common and you can push past it. If you're a new kind of author, sort of from a sort of minority background coming into publishing, I wish for you immediate success, instant New York Times bestseller, movie deal, 17 foreign rights. You know what I mean? I wish all that for you. But if that doesn't happen for you, know that that doesn't have any bearing or reflection on the quality of your book, the quality of your writing, the kind of person that you are. And that often, publishing is a numbers game. You have to kind of it's like what's it called? A slot machine. You have to keep on hitting it. And persistence is a way to guarantee yourself more and more chances to get at that success. And it goes for everybody, I think, that kind of advice. And I would also say, specifically for, again, writers of color and writers from minority backgrounds, that if you feel like something is discriminatory, don't gaslight yourself. It probably is. The publishing industry is such that it's very subjective, and so it's easy for people to brush off bigotry, discrimination as like just subjective taste. And I think often, gatekeepers of publishing don't even realize that that's what they're doing. And sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes it's like, wow, I'm surprised you felt comfortable writing that in an email. But sometimes it is kind of subtle. And I think it's easy for them to kind of avoid accountability for that. So I would just say, don't gaslight yourself. That's probably what's happening. Don't play that comparison game. Know that you're playing kind of by a different metric, and don't let that discourage you. Remember sort of what brought you into this. The love of writing, the story, whatever it is that brought you into this, that made you start writing. Make that the thing that keeps you writing. And I think that goes for anybody, even who has success versus maybe doesn't have the success that they want. That at the end of the day, success or not, it's going to be you and the writing, and you have to be proud of what you've done and proud of the work.
Mhm. Wow. That is, yeah, lots to consider and lots to think about, but definitely puts like kind of remotivates me to think
Good.
about, yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely
If
remotivates me
you
to
ever
think
need a pep talk, just hit me up, okay? Just DM me. I'll send you a voice note.
that would be great. I'll call you
No,
every
I'm
time.
serious. I'm serious, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So what in another aspect, since you gave some advice for writers, what is something you would say to people who felt seen slash represented in your books? In Reasons We Break, in TJ Power, like anyone who felt like they saw themselves in the characters that you wrote, what would you say to them?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's I think, such an honor to hear that because, of course, as you know, in any diaspora community, you know that your experience is not the same as the next person. We are not a monolith, and everyone has a different kind of experience. So when I write, I write very specific to the experiences that I know, that I can imagine. And so I find it, it's very touching when people find that they can relate to that experience. And I think it goes back to what people say about the universal and the specifics, right? We can all find something to relate to. And to that point, I would say that I would encourage you to continue to look for stories that are outside of our cultures. Go to minority writers of different kind of cultures, different races, different ethnicities, different religions, different sexualities, different whatever, because it's so important to kind of learn about everybody in this world, and not just ourselves, not just the quote unquote default white populations. I think it benefits everybody, and builds our empathy and just makes our world and our writing richer to experience and know so much about the world and other people.
I love that. Okay, so last question, but since again you said that you wrote this or like finished this end of 2021, is there something that you're working on right now, or is there any news that you can share about anything? I know it's been only 1 month since this. I'm already
Yeah,
looking for the next book by you.
I appreciate that. So I have an adult romance that is not yet announced. So I hope to announce that soon. That's going to come out in 2027, unless something happens publishing wise. That is already written. I guess I shouldn't say too much about it, but I will say it's an idea I've had for like many, many years, even before I had a professional publishing career. And I'm so excited that I'm going to get to publish it. So look out for that, 2027, my adult romance debut. And then I'm such a spin-off girly. I am horrific in this realm. Like I have been working on another spin-off in this universe, which I swear would be the last spin-off in this universe. I swear, guys, I promise.
No,
but
this is what we need, though. This is what we need. I just want to stay in this world and keep reading
okay,
books.
awesome. Cool, so do I. I just love the characters so much. But I think this will be fun. I again don't want to say too much about it quite yet, because this is my publisher, and I don't know if they'll want it or not. Still in that kind of stage. So we'll see, but that is another thing that is hopefully in the works, and maybe you'll hear more soon.
Well, I'm so glad I asked that at the end, because if I'd found that out in the beginning, my entire mind would have just been whoosh. I would just be thinking about these two books that I have to wait for now. But wow, that is so exciting. I'm literally kind of made my day hearing that.
I'm honestly, genuinely, I'm so touched that like you're excited about them. Like seriously, like I think you can also imagine as a writer, like if anybody is like other than yourself is like interested, like you're like, whoa. So
yeah, no, I am like so interested. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to shout about it. But yeah, thank you for sharing as much as you did though about it. But yeah, I will be waiting from now until when we get both of these books. So very, very happy about that.
I'll try to get you arcs. All right, I got you.
Yes, as soon as possible, well, anyways, thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation, and I'm so glad that we could have Reasons We Break for November, and also happy 1 month to this book again.
Thank you.
I had a great time talking to you. I had a great time reading this, and yeah.
Same, likewise. And again, thank you for selecting Reasons We Break as your book club pick. I'm very honored. It just think about people just like reading my book and discussing it. Again, it's just one of those things that's very mind blowing. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your interest in my books. Like truly, thank you so much.
Of course.
And remember that you can hit me up anytime.
Definitely will be taking you up on that. So, yes. Anyways, if you haven't read Reasons We Break or TJ Powar Has Something to Prove, I highly recommend checking them out, buying them from local independent stores or requesting them at your libraries. And make sure to follow Jesmeen's Instagram page, which I will link below for updates and news about her upcoming works. Yay! Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We're both wearing red.
Oh, excellent. Wow, it's very festive of us.
Festive and on theme.
Exactly. I didn't even think about that, but I'm glad you did. See, you even matched like the exact tone, the
Exactly.
color tone. That's
Hmm.
amazing.